Hey guys, welcome back to the Glory Living channel. My name's Hannah, and today we are going to be talking about tomatoes, how to keep them healthy, 3 natural ways to do that. Okay guys, let's go check it out. Tomatoes are a staple in the garden. They are loved by many, and even those who do not love them love to still grow them, and even if they just do it to give them away, because they're so beautiful. These beautiful red ripe tomatoes growing on the vine, it's just so fun to grow them. But as a southern gardener, I do know that there are so many challenges that can come to growing tomatoes because there are so many diseases that want to overtake them. Now, there are many ways to go about dealing with pests and disease in the garden. But one thing that I want to talk about today is actually how to prevent that in a natural way the best you can. It doesn't mean that you won't have to deal with it if you do these 3 things, but 3 tips to helping naturally with no sprays keep your tomato plants as healthy as possible. Between blights, blossom rot, aphids, there are so many pests that can attack your tomatoes. Now, we're not going to hit on every single thing that you can do, but I do want to talk about the 3 things that do really help with keeping your tomato plants healthy. And although it doesn't mean that you will not get diseases if you do these 3 tips, they will help slow it down. It is inevitable in the South to get blight on your tomatoes by the end of the season. It's just going to happen. But there are some ways and some things that you should be doing or can do to help prevent it or to slow it down. So let's get started. Tip number 1 that I'm going to talk about as far as keeping tomato plants healthy is actually pruning them. Now, I do not do a full prune. There are people who prune suckers off the tomato plants, and you can definitely do that. But I am talking about just an initial pruning, and I'm going to head over to the big garden to show you how I pruned mine, and I'm going to show you what we did, give you some tips, and tell you why this is such a good idea. This tomato plant right here is a beast. It's doing awesome. Here's the problem though. It has tons of low branches. It is very bushy, and lots of these leaves are touching the ground. I don't want that, and the reason I don't want that is because one of the main ways that tomato plants are going to get diseases and fungal diseases is by water splashing up from the ground, or the funguses and bacteria on the ground hitting the plant from those lower leaves and causing a disease to attack the plant. So it is painful as a gardener sometimes to prune your plants, or even when you have to thin them. That is like, if you want to know whether you want to be a good gardener or a great gardener, you have to ask yourself whether you're willing to prune and thin. If you're not willing to prune and thin, you'll still have good gardens, but I think that's what makes the great gardeners, and probably why I'm still just a good gardener. So these people, you know, like people who are great gardeners, they are like they know when to prune, they know when to take off fruit, they know when to thin out their plants, and that's why they get beautiful harvests. And this is hard to want to prune out tomato leaves, especially if you wait too long and they're starting to flower on the ones you need to prune, but it's so worth it. So I am going to start pruning some of these tomato leaves. I'm going to strip them up at least 6 inches from the ground. Some of mine are a little more behind than others. Some of my plants are only 6 inches. Some of them are much bigger. So I'm going to start pruning them, and that will really benefit them in the long run. Even though at the beginning it sometimes feels hard, by the end of the summer these things will be monstrous jungle-like plants. So I just have to remember that, keep that in mind, and start pruning these tomatoes. Another little hint about tomato plants is I'm pruning these off. These actually can be replanted. Everything on these stems, all these little hairs on the stems will become roots. You can stick this in a glass of water and create a new tomato plant. If for some reason you need a few more, you just want a few more, these are really easy to propagate. As you can see, this is so much more thinned out. I am trimming this down so that this is bare here and that none of these leaves are going to be touching the ground and carrying diseases up. I want to show you this tomato plant that hasn't been pruned yet. The leaves that are touching the ground are already yellow and burned. They're not doing good, and that's because they either are getting like watered on and it's burning hot on, you know, whatever. They're not doing good. It's really like you really don't want any leaves on your tomato plants touching the ground ever. Although some of these diseases are airborne, some of these are going to be transferred to your tomato plants from the soil. And so this is why it is so important to prune the bottoms of your tomato plants. I prune mine at least 6 inches up. I might go a little bit further. Some people recommend to do between 12 to 18 inches from the ground to the next stem of leaves. You can do as much or as little as you feel comfortable with. My plants are still growing and getting tall, but that is going to help tremendously to make sure that your leaves do not get splashed on from water, rain, and the soil and bring up those diseases to touch onto the leaves. Okay, this brings us to our second tip here, and that is mulching around your tomato plants. Whether you're using wood chips like I have behind me here, or whether you're using straw or whatever type of mulch you want. The reason why mulching in some way, shape, or form, whether with wood chips or something else, onto your tomato plants is because this keeps the soil from splashing up onto the leaves. It gives a cushioning for the water to hit without splashing up soil, and that way not carrying diseases onto your leaves. Now obviously pruning helps, but another step of mulching can also be very helpful. Back to Eden gardening style can be very helpful for doing that, and the layering methods of compost and wood chips can really help with disease control. But this is another tip for keeping those diseases off of them. Remember that you just really want to help your tomato leaves not get wet, not get dirty. That's going to help slow down diseases attacking your plants. We just have our woven weed fabric on. I'm not sure that necessarily constitutes really as the mulching, but for us, that's just the method we do. So we have not used wood chips, but in future gardens, I really would love to try and experiment with things like back to Eden gardening and layering with wood chips. I would really, really love to do that. For now, we just use our woven weed fabric, but it's still a great tip. This really helps keep the leaves dry at all costs. Whatever you can do, keep your tomato leaves dry. That will really help lessen the chance of diseases. All right, my last tip for you guys. This is gonna seem almost obvious, but you would be surprised at how much this can actually help your plants. And the thing is, it's actually a good, consistent watering of your tomatoes. This may seem so silly, like, duh, your plants need watering to stay healthy. But it's more than just that. See, without that water, your plants cannot efficiently get the nutrients out of the soil. Just because the nutrients are in the soil does not mean that the plant is getting them effectively. The water is what helps them carry those nutrients from the soil into the plant. So, have you ever dealt with blossom end rot? Have you ever seen that? It's when your tomato actually starts rotting from the inside out and you have a black spot that literally shows up on the end of your tomato. It looks disgusting and it ruins the tomato. Okay, so what is causing that? Well, if you do a quick Google search, it's probably going to tell you, oh, like you have a calcium deficiency. You need to add calcium to your soil. Is that true? Well, the reality is that you may have enough calcium in your soil, but you may be going through a drought. With all the extreme heat that's been going on around the country, today we finally got rain, and it was like so thankful to the Lord for that, because it has been so dry that people who are already getting tomatoes may be experiencing blossom end rot soon. And that is because it's actually sometimes that you have enough soil, you have enough calcium in your soil, but you are going through a dry season and the plant is having a hard time getting the calcium out of the soil. So sometimes what you need instead of calcium is really just to water your garden consistently for a few weeks, and you'll find that the issue goes away. So consistent watering, and not just consistently watering or making sure that there is enough water. If it's raining, that's great. But maybe making sure that you're watering them correctly. Watering on top of those leaves is not good for those sensitive tomato plants. You really want to make sure that you're watering on the ground, that you're watering underneath them, that you have a drip irrigation, something like that. If you water, then grab a bucket and just run the water down towards the bottom of the plant, not hitting the leaves, not spraying all over the leaves. And of course, you never want to water your garden in the middle of the afternoon, because that can fry your plants. Those water droplets will act like magnifying glasses on those leaves, and it will absolutely burn them and fry them. So a good morning water, hit them at the base of the plants. That will really help your tomatoes to stay hydrated, which will keep them less stressed out, which will keep them stronger and more resilient. Now, like I said, here in Tennessee, I absolutely know that by the end of the season, my tomato plants, no matter what I do, are going to have blight. Okay, it's just the way that it is. We live in a super humid climate, but doing some of these tips, at least one or two of them, can really help your tomato plants and will keep them healthier and happier for you. And the healthier and happier your plants are, the greater abundance of harvest that you're gonna get from them. So guys, I hope this video was helpful to you. There's nothing better than a tomato fresh from the garden, and every gardener knows that. It just does not compete with those store waxy plastic flavored tomatoes. And so It is so awesome if you can have these tips and apply them to your garden and have a better harvest of those awesome, gorgeous tomatoes. Make sauces, make salsas. They're so good for so many things. And guys, I just want you to have a successful gardening season and to get as many tomatoes as possible from your garden. Well, our sun is finally coming back out again, guys. Feels so good out here and so happy that it finally rained. I know that will be fantastic for my tomatoes in the large garden. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was helpful to you. Just a few quick tips to naturally help your tomatoes stay healthy. Thanks guys for watching. Please like this video. Please share it with your friends and your family. It's a great way to support me in creating this content for you. And if you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe. We'd love to have you for the future videos. Thank you guys so much. Until next time, we'll see you soon.